Earlier, I spoke with Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy about the Trump administration's war in Iran, and this occurred, our conversation, before the Wars Powers vote in the Senate. Here it is. The administration said today it's been crystal clear communicating to the American public what its objectives are. Senator, do you believe you have a firm understanding of the objectives, more importantly, to your constituents?
No, I don't think Congress nor the people I represent know why we have decided to attack Iran. First of all, half the administration is saying we got dragged into the war because the Israelis were going to attack and we worried about blowback. Others in the administration say that it was our decision to go in. If the goal here is not regime change, and they are saying their goal is not regime change, then there is no way for our planes alone to destroy their nuclear capacity, their drone capacity, their missile capacity. The minute our planes go back to their bases, a new regime, which is just as bad, maybe even more hardline than the previous regime, will start to rebuild that capacity. This just makes no sense. It looks like it's going to result in people paying much higher prices here in the United States, cost $1 trillion when it's all said and done, and we end up with the same hardline government in charge of Iran.
The administration has been a bit vague on the topic of boots on the ground. What I heard you suggesting there is that if there are aims that the administration wants to pursue, inevitably there might need to be boots on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me that we have learned nothing from our failed hubris in the Middle East. Over and over again, you know, the defense industry and hawks in Congress and the administration say, well, you know, American military might, we can change political realities on the ground in the Middle East. They're wrong every single time. We certainly know that air power alone doesn't do the trick. In Libya, it did dislodge Gaddafi, but it then set off a deadly civil war in that country that empowered many of the extremist groups like ISIS that have designs to attack the United States. Even ground troops, as we saw in Afghanistan, don't do the trick. We had 20 years of ground troops in Afghanistan, and in the end, the same people who controlled the country before we went in controlled it in the end. So our best policy here would have been restraint and to continue to work on diplomacy. Our best option here would have been to not throw out the agreement we had with Iran that actually kept them more than a year from a nuclear weapon. I just don't see any military option, ground troops, or an air campaign that's going to achieve their objectives.
Senator, the administration also argues that this war can be contained to Iran. Do you believe that?
Well, I remember Donald Rumsfeld telling America at the beginning of the Iraq War that it was going to last 5 days, 5 weeks, no longer than 5 months. And of course, it set the region on fire for decades. What you're seeing is chaos, and not just, you know, in and around the immediate neighborhood of Iran, but on the streets of Pakistan, throughout the broader Middle East region. You might see a Shia insurgency developing across the globe, which will start to attack U.S. interests. Let's hope that this is not a world-changing event, that it's just a mistake that can be repaired quickly, but it might be.
The administration said today the State Department is more responsive to Americans who are trying to evacuate the region. Are you satisfied, and do you have constituents in the region who are trying to get out?
Well, I have many constituents who are there who are trying to leave, and it should infuriate all of them and all of their friends and relatives back home that there was no plan to get U.S. personnel and U.S. citizens out of Middle East. As your listeners know, for the first 48 hours when the threat was the most acute, if you called the State Department line, the automated message said, "Do not call us for help. We will not help you." Well, now they've changed the outgoing message, but still, as far as we can tell, there is no scalable, coordinated effort to get Americans out of the region. It's just unforgivable that they didn't plan this ahead of time.
Senate debated and voted on a war powers resolution. It was always doomed to failure and is not the most direct mechanism to restrain any administration, but the power of the purse is. Speaker Johnson said today there might be a $50 billion supplemental request for this war. What do you think Congress is going to do?
Well, this is the moment where we can draw the line in the sand. We can't control whether we get a vote on a declaration of war. Yes, it is the obligation of the leaders of the Senate and the House to bring a war declaration vote before Congress. But if they don't, then the way that we can stop this war is to deny them the funding for the war. I mean, people in America want their taxpayer dollars used to lower their health care premiums. They want their money to be used to fix their roads and their kids' schools. They do not want their taxpayer dollars being used to fight a war against Iran that doesn't make our country less safe. So if they come to the Congress for a authorization of additional funding for this war, I would hope that every single Democrat votes no, tells the administration spend money on American citizens, and if that happens, then we can stop this war through the power of the purse.
Do you have any sense at all, Senator Murphy, that any Republicans might join in that effort?
Well, I think this war is going to get more and more unpopular by the day as more Americans get killed, as prices here at home go up, as the administration continues to be totally incoherent in articulating the reasons why they started this war. I think it's going to be hard for Republicans, especially those that are on the ballot this November, to say, you know what, I want your taxpayer money not to go to lowering health care premiums that are spiraling for millions of Americans due to Trump's actions, but instead to fight another war in the Middle East. I think that's a really hard thing to run on.
Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. Appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.